Welcome back to 10 Kids, 2 Docs. I'm Vivian.
And I'm Sylvia. Today, we are going to talk about picky eating, particularly toddlers, and oftentimes how that can continue on into childhood. And Vivian, out of our 10 children, I actually do believe that you have the pickiest eater.
Yes, I think I bear that honor, and therefore I'm the one that gets to tell the story today. So let's jump in.
Welcome to the 10 Kids, 2 Docs podcast. Seasoned pediatricians and longtime friends, Sylvia Bank and Vivian Carlin have counseled thousands of parents and are raising 4 and 6 kids, respectively. Join these doctor moms as they incorporate fun and their combined wisdom and experience to share parenting insights for anyone looking for practical and trustworthy guidance. Please note that this podcast is not intended to be a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment from your doctor.
Okay, so Vivian, why don't you start us off by telling us about your experience with the picky eater and what it was like as a mom?
Yeah, okay. So my picky eater is my fourth, and I remember, this is around the time I have 6 kids that are ages 9 and under, right? So life's a little chaotic. He's around the age of 3. He would go stay at my mom's house for a day, and she would be like, gosh, I made spaghetti and he ate 5 bowls of spaghetti. He must be growing. Or she would say, oh, he wanted pancakes and I made pancakes and he ate like 10. I don't know how this child is doing it. Okay. And I kind of realize that he has developed this technique where he is just fasting until he hits one of the foods that he likes. And in between, he's really not eating very much. Like I'm just feeding the family. I'm just offering everybody the same thing. I'm not monitoring who eats what or how much they eat. So I'm not even really paying attention. And I have realized over time that he has selected a very limited diet. And he's figured out how to get that diet with frequent enough intervals that he can keep himself growing and sustained.
And I want to make a comment here about your story. Having your fourth as your picky eater, I can totally understand how food is prepared, it's on the table, everyone eat, then we clean up. It also proves and I think shows that there was no parental expectation prior to the realization that he was a picky eater, right?
Yes. We should know, like, his growth and development were completely normal. And
were there any complaints? Did he complain at a meal? Like, I don't like this, or I don't want to eat this?
Well, I'm sure he did. And I don't know that I actually thought much of it. And then as soon as I caught on to what he was doing, and I was more aware, and I would be like, hey, you need to eat that. Then it would come out like, oh, no, I can't. I hate that.
So this brings up my next question. Were there vegetables and fruit in his repertoire?
Yeah, so I can list for you the foods that he would eat. So let's just right off the top rattle off chicken nuggets, hot dogs, cheese pizza, and French fries. He would also eat spaghetti with spaghetti sauce. And then he would eat apples. He would eat Go-Go Squeeze brand applesauce, no other brands. He would eat strawberries. He would eat carrots, but they had to be cooked. He wouldn't eat them raw. And he would eat corn. And plus, he would eat pancakes and plain bagels. And that was about it.
Yes.
It has been a struggle. I'll say that.
Yeah. So I want to hear a little bit more about after you realized that he had a limited repertoire, what was your food prep like then?
Yeah. So I think he was my transition point where I really started making things separate. And I mean, honestly, I think a lot of people do this naturally anyway. It's like, okay, we're having dinner. Here's the meat. Here's the veggie. Here's the grain, right?
You'd like separated instead of making one big pot of everything mixed in.
Exactly. Like, I don't know that I've made a casserole in a decade. I would know, like, okay, he's not going to starve because there is something here that he will eat. And then I'm serving all of it. And I'm like, hey, you have to try this.
And were there times, like, was there a struggle over mealtime?
Yeah. So that's a good question. This idea in parenting of choosing your battles comes up a lot.
Yeah.
But as a parent, we can have a tendency to have anxiety about our children. Our brain will always find something to be worried about.
Right.
And in my mind, yes, he was a picky eater, but he was growing fine. He was developing fine. He was a generally happy kid. So I was like, I don't have time to fret about this. There are bigger things in life to be anxious about. I can give him a vitamin. I can keep offering him healthy foods. But at the end of the day, this is not worth either my energy to try to fix the problem, which I probably couldn't have anyway, or my anxiety. And so I didn't want it to become a fight and mostly just let it go.
Right. It wound up not being a huge focus all the time. Were you ever at that point where you were fixing multiple meals? Like, now I need to prepare something special for this child.
Let me think about that. Again, my cooking was modified so that it was pretty simple and basic, and there was usually something there he would like. And then, at some point with the picky eater, they get old enough, I mean, literally by like age 7, where I could be like, this is what we're having for dinner. You need to try it. If you're not going to eat it, you go fend for yourself, right? Go find something. So I very early on would implement that. There's apples in the fridge. There are things that I know you'll eat. You have to sit down with us. You have to taste it. But after that, I don't even need to watch. You just go take care of what you need to do to feed yourself.
Right.
I'm not going to spend the time to do it.
And where is the balance that you struck for nutrition versus slightly unhealthy in the balance of his diet?
That's a great question. So I think one of the biggest pitfalls that I needed to be aware of with my picky eater was to make sure that he wasn't calorie loading with high sugar, low nutrition options. And the easiest way to do that is really just to not have it in your house. So we didn't really have a lot of juice in our house. We didn't have soda in our house, and we had limited dessert options in our house. Now, the other question that will come up is processed versus natural foods. And whereas I felt very strongly, I'm going to make sure he's not loading calories with sugary snacks, the processed foods battle is a little bit harder to fight. And I mentioned this striving for independence in his eating, like, I've made dinner, now you try it. And if you're not going to eat it, go fend for yourself. And as he got older and could use the microwave, there were a lot of frozen food options that he could just pull out for himself and make. And those tend to be more processed. But at that season in life, that was a lifesaver for us. And I think, again, prevented this struggle between him and me as far as his food prep, and also hopefully taught him independence along the way. And that was more what I wanted for him. The processed food, at some point you have to say whatever.
Right. I think this is kind of some of the difficulty that I feel in the pediatric office, just talking with you about it, is trying to offer advice for healthy eating while also not trying to judge the parent and the difficulty that they experience with having a picky eater in their household 24/7. I mean, and there are times where they can do a little bit better and times where it's just like, we're surviving right now. But I think partially to kind of take off the pressure, like, how much of this am I catering his pickiness to me being a short order chef, the rest of my family being limited by his palate, versus that tug, is he getting enough? Am I offering enough that he's getting nutrition? And I feel that's probably the emotion that a lot of parents of picky eaters go back and forth with, right?
Yeah. And I see a lot of parents in the office where they come in and they have that picky eater, like really age 4 or 5. It's become really clear this child has a very limited palate, and they're really nervous and worried and stressed. And again, in the situations where the child is growing well, they're developing normally, I often tell them about my son, and I'm like, I had the advantage of having 6 children. I did nothing differently for this child, and I have 5 really good eaters. So this is completely on him. This is not on me. I didn't do anything differently. It worked for 5 of them. But I can imagine that if he was my only child, or if he was my first, I would be very critically looking at myself and thinking, what did I do wrong?
Mm-hmm.
I clearly must be doing something wrong. And I have the confidence of saying, and I still tell this child, this is not on me, right?
Let's move on to discuss the American Academy of Pediatrics recommendations for parents with picky eaters.
Okay, so Sylvia, you've heard this whole story. If I came to see you and I had this child and he was 5 or 6. And I'm telling
Sure.
you, when you take the dietary history, these are the like 7 to 10 foods that this child eats. What do you say?
Sure. Well, first of all, as the doctor, I look at the growth and development, right?
Sure.
And sometimes parents will say, I was a picky eater, or they will say, I was a really thin child.
Yeah.
And, there is a part of genetics that plays into this. The next step, I talk about how eating can be a very simple thing. And I don't want them to lose this simple eating drive and instinct.
Yes.
When people are hungry, they eat. And when people are full, they should stop.
Yeah.
Sometimes the behaviors that start developing around picky eating and mealtime, sometimes the anger or frustration that parents can express with a picky eater can start changing that cue
Yeah,
of,
absolutely.
I'm hungry, I need to eat. I'm full, I'm stopping. The American Academy of Pediatrics talks about this, to look at eating as a 3-day summary,
Yes.
right? I mean, go through the last 3 days and say, have we had a splattering of good meals there? And then we kind of delve in further with other recommendations.
Mm-hmm.
What is the parent's job associated with feeding and mealtime? The American Academy of Pediatrics actually outlines this in their Bright Futures website on picky eating. A parent's job is to offer healthy meals and snacks. That's
Yeah.
it.
Offer. Yes.
Offer. Right. That is your job as a parent, to offer the food and have it there. It's the child's job to decide when and how much to eat.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like your story about your child very much illustrates that it was your philosophy.
Yes.
In the other thing that I explained to parents early on is, they're like, why? Why all of a
Mm,
sudden are they no longer eating? They were, when we started introducing foods,
yep.
as a baby, they used to eat everything. And the American Academy of Pediatrics does mention that below 9 months of age, babies' taste buds are immature. They are more open to
Mm-hmm.
trying new tastes and textures at the younger age. And then later in toddlerhood, as their taste buds develop, then you may see the emergence of this pickiness, sometimes with taste and sometimes with
Yes.
texture too.
Yes.
And it helps parents understand that they didn't do anything wrong. I guess lastly, I would just outline some recommendations that the American Academy of Pediatrics has for parents. So, first of all, they recommend for parents at mealtime. As your child is rejecting your food, complaining, whining, possibly even crying about mealtime, to not react at all,
Yes.
positive or negative.
This is the advantage of having a lot of children, right?
Right. It's
You
easy
just kind of
to
go under the radar because I'm not paying attention to you.
right, and also that it winds up not becoming the focus of the table.
Yes. Yes.
Every single mealtime, are we going to do this again? And that winds up forming a habit of rejecting food
Yeah.
rather than a habit of eating. So, not reacting is one thing. The other thing that I recommend is to kind of set some rules, for mealtime. And I usually do it with the parent and the child
Yes.
present in the office, where I will set an agreement and a minimum. Like,
Mhm.
we're engaging in a contract right here.
Yes.
Name your fruit, name your one vegetable. Parents, your job is to prepare. You prepare the carrots,
Yeah.
you prepare the apple slices. Child, if your parent presented these two foods that you just chose, you will eat them. And then we actually shake hands, and the child sits there. There's no fight at dinner time. It's been agreed, and no emotion from the parent. The child eats minimum, and if they want to be excused, then they're excused at that point.
Yeah. I do like the preset negotiation. Tell me the one thing, one fruit, one vegetable. If I have those available for you, what will you
Right.
eat?
Right. And then it makes it easy for parents too to say,
Yeah.
okay, if you said raw peeled, no seeds sliced, then the parent makes that every day. And I do try to tell the parents, sometimes it makes cooking easier because
It's
The
in the
repertoire is so limited, right?
right. Yes.
Right. Okay. The second thing that they recommend parents do is not to make a second meal. And you highlighted this in your experience as well. The meal is made. This is what we're eating. I am not making another meal for you. And lastly, it's trust. Parents need to trust if the child is hungry, they will eat. And if there's a battle of wills that has ensued for several meals, if not several months, then that starts interfering with the hunger satiety cues
Yeah.
where
Well,
they're now battling you even though they're hungry.
right.
That's not where we want to land. So if you feel like you're headed towards that direction where suddenly the battle is more important than hunger, then parents know, oh, maybe we need to rethink this.
Yes. And again, wanting to establish that healthy emotional relationship with food.
Mhm.
Food is functional. I mean, it's pleasurable as well, but we eat because we're hungry and our body needs that, not provoking any kind of emotional response around eating or not eating.
Right. An external cue that's not hunger or
Yes.
satiety that makes them eat or not eat. Lastly, knowing that children can wait for the next meal.
Yeah.
Like and your child illustrated this perfectly.
Oh, yeah.
Until something was worth eating, he would literally fast until that time and then eat, 6 meals worth at that
And I
point,
had
right?
no idea. I didn't even notice because he was growing just fine and his
Yeah.
mood was fine and he was fine.
Yeah. They also have a whole series on how to foster an independence with eating. And their recommendations were the following: go grocery shopping with your child, show them the produce section, and have them choose an item.
Yeah.
We've chosen this at the store. Let's give this a try. So, when the child is older, preparing food with the child, having a little bit of buy in with the process can also often foster independence and increase the variety of foods children eat. Let children feed themselves, which I feel like is a whole, maybe another discussion
Ab-
about a movement that is known as baby led weaning.
Absolutely. I look forward to you and I doing an episode on baby led weaning.
And lastly, having your child have some choices. Maybe they choose one item in their menu and you choose one item.
Hmm.
So a choice will often help lead to an increased repertoire and children experimenting with more foods.
Yes, again, this is all from the American Academy of Pediatrics, and we'll put links to all of these resources in the show notes.
And the last thing I want to say is that sometimes parents are at their wits' end and they very openly express, I cannot get my child to eat a vegetable.
Yeah,
I will say, you're trying your best, acknowledge that parents are trying, introduce a multivitamin, and then you're done. You can only do so much. And sometimes that okay from the pediatrician can be stress relieving to
absolutely.
say,
I fully agree.
yeah.
So I want to end this with a quick story. And this is similar for those of you who've listened to Head Lice. Sylvia, you shared the story of this touching moment you had related to head lice with your child. And similarly, picky eating has been difficult, but I have this touching moment with my picky eater, and he was probably about 8. And he came to me and he said, Mom, I now understand why I'm a picky eater. And I was like, oh, tell me. And he's like, well, I am a super taster. So he had watched this episode about the, I don't even know, you may know, is it 10%? Whatever
Mhm,
percent of the population it is that has this extra set of taste buds that makes them
mhm.
quote unquote super tasters.
Okay.
He was just like, I feel like I now appreciate this about myself, and the rest of you just cannot understand.
I love how he is self-diagnosing himself with super tasting, right?
Yeah. Okay, so I just want to end with a few high level summary points for our listeners. First of all, is your child growing and developing normally? We cannot say this enough times. If that is happening, then great. Let's celebrate that. Secondly, when you have that child who's that very picky eater, to realize we enumerated a number of reasons why children at toddler age can be prone to becoming more restricted in their diet. And that has to do with their development and them specifically as a child. It's not due to something the parent did or didn't do. Thirdly, a lot of the AAP recommendations and the things that we've talked about are to give the parent a sense of freedom go ahead and prepare food as you normally would. Pay some attention to particular foods your child likes, but your job is to encourage your child to try new foods, to encourage them to eat the food that's given to them, but to not feel responsible for the outcome. I do want to say we need to be cautious that they're not calorie loading with sugary snacks or beverages. So, juices, sodas, all of the abundant sugary snacks that are so ubiquitous in food today. I would be very limited on what you have in your home for any child, really. But you want to make sure that your picky eater is not picky because they're taking in calories from these other high calorie, low nutrition sources. Finally, everything we talk about in parenting will be applicable to the majority, but there's going to be a subset of picky eaters out there where none of these things are going to work. And they're so restricted in texture or in foods that the battle is so much harder than what we're describing. And I don't want those parents to feel like we've forgotten about them or that we have minimized what their challenge looks like with the picky eater. I know for those kids, it is not as simple as what we are describing. And I hope that we can be of support to you too. But that's the child that needs the regular pediatrician visit to help guide them. I do want listeners to understand, this was true of my son too. Picky eating is generally a season. At some point, they naturally expand their diet, or they hit a point where they're feeling peer pressure, or they want to go to camp, or they want to go to people's houses, or they want to perform athletically, or whatever it is, where they become internally motivated on their own without you having to nag them that they want to expand their diet. And there is great hope in that.
Hopefully, we've started tackling the topic of eating. There were some topics that we may explore in the future that were brought up today. Baby-led weaning, talking about children that are more restrictive with their calories, and food allergy in infants and children, how to prepare meals and encourage healthy eating when food allergy is part of your medical picture. This is 10 Kids, 2 Docs. I'm Sylvia.
And I'm Vivian. We'll see you next time.
See you next time.
Thank you for listening to 10 Kids, 2 Docs, hosted and created by Sylvia Bank and Vivian Carlin. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe and recommend our podcast to other listeners. Visit our website at 10kids2docs.com, where you can find links to social media and leave comments or suggestions. Back next week with more topics in parenting.